Welcome to the Graduation Equity Webinar Series. I'm Kathy Anderson, Graduation Equity Program Supervisor, and today we are talking about community partners for college and career readiness. This meeting's being recorded and it should be available immediately following on YouTube. We do have captions available with that live transcript in the menu. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can. And we'll be sharing our slides with you in a little bit, but they're also available on our webinar page if you want to check those out. This webinar is brought to you through the Office of Student Engagement and Supports within the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. At OSPI, we believe each student needs to be prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. The Graduation Equity Webinar Series was created with the purpose of highlighting practices that increase access to education and ultimately to graduation. And through our webinars, we're striving to go beyond equality and to think about the opportunities that we have to examine and dismantle current policies and practices that result in disparate outcomes for our students, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that each student has access to the instruction and support that will make them successful in school and in life. We want to acknowledge historical context and engage our students, families, and communities as partners in decision-making to create the kind of schools we know kids will thrive in. I want to share with you this ancestral lands map. From the bunnies being born in my garden to the seagulls outside my window at OSPI, this time of year is a celebration of life and environmental renewal. So we ask that the participants of this meeting honor the ancestral lands on which each of you are located today. And our resource sheet that we'll share with you, it'll have links. So if you'd like to explore your area, you can do that. In my life, I mostly travel around the intersection of the ancestral lands of the Squaxin Island, Coast Salish, Cowlitz, and Nisqually tribes. And I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still live here today. And if you're wondering about tribal consultation, it is a great way to get to know your local tribes and begin relationships that benefit students and their families. And if you'd like to know more about it, we'd love to connect you with our Office of Native Education. Among other things, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think this is especially important as we're thinking about the long-ranging effects of the pandemic on our staff and students. We saw in our Healthy Youth Survey results that our state's kids are feeling more anxiety, experiencing more depression, especially our students who are LGBTQ+ and people of color. And we know our teachers are struggling too. And as an equity leader, one way is to use your voice, your platforms, your social media accounts, assemblies, announcements, to share some messages that encourage everyone to seek help if they need it. We want to diminish stigma around asking for help. Another option you might consider is offering your staff youth mental health first aid training. There are trainers all over the state that you can tap into, and it just might help your staff as well. I wanted to provide you with a slide so you can share it in some way. Maybe it can be an inspiration for a social media post. Awareness is important, and if you keep the warning signs in mind, you're more likely to notice. So I've included some of those for you. And if someone does tell you that they're depressed or thinking about suicide, you can use the ALGE strategy to support them. ALGE is part of the Youth Mental Health First Aid training and is a helpful way to remember what to do. I know it can be uncomfortable to talk about, but I hope that you'll take on the challenge of talking about it this month and using your power to elevate the importance of mental health as we close out the school year. If you have other resources that you'd like to draw attention to, you can also feel free to share those in the chat. I know it's also, I think it's Foster Care Month as well, National Foster Care Month as well as Asian American Month, is that correct? And Timmy, do you remember? You're nodding your head, I can see you. What is the full?
Yeah, the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It's a long one, but absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at the chat. I'm seeing people checking in. Thank you for putting your names and your spots in there. I appreciate that. We chose to talk about community partners for college and career readiness because they're amazing. And we see their partnerships and initiatives supporting our staff and our youth out there. In today's webinar, we want to talk about foundational system strategies for inviting community-based organizations as partners to assist with centering equitable and culturally responsive opportunities for students for college and career readiness. And you'll get to hear some firsthand experience on building a system for community partnerships and supporting partnerships with groups like the Trufant Family Foundation, Push for Dreams, and the University of Washington. And we'll share some resources to help you get started also. I brought with me Dr. Timmy Foster. She is our OSPI College Readiness Program Supervisor Lead. And she's brought with her Marcus Trufant, retired Seahawk and the founder of the Trufant Family Foundation. We'll have a panel discussion in our second half as well. I also want to take a moment to recognize and honor Bonnie Zimmerman. This is Bonnie's last official webinar with us, although she actually had to join us as an attendee. So it's a little bit different this morning than we're used to. But she's heading into retirement, and Bonnie has been an amazing partner in the creation of the series. She carries with her a spirit of continuous improvement and collaboration. Over the years, she's stepped in to develop the 201 webinar series. She's been a contract and project manager for us, as well as an innovative thought partner. Her suggestions have really enriched our offerings, connections, and pushed us to grow. And it's not going to be the same without her. I'm going to miss her so much in this work. And so thank you, Bonnie, for your friendship and organization. You're definitely the Wendy to my Peter Pan. And I'd like our audience to wish Bonnie well too in the chat. Yes, thank you. Congratulations to Bonnie and happy trails, and much appreciation. We'd also like to know who's in our audience. We always check in and to see who is here, so we're going to run a poll. So if you can tell us your role, grade bands, and how familiar you are with the topic, that would be great. And we'll be running that as well. All right, I'm seeing lots of counselors, school psychologists, community liaisons here. We've got a nice group of administrators. We've got lots of OSPI and district and ESD staff with us. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, the majority of our audience today, we got about 50% in the school counseling bucket there. Way to go. And yeah, I'm going to share the results back. If you didn't get a chance to vote, don't worry, it's okay. Just so that folks can see. Next up, we're going to go to Dr. Foster to tell us a little bit about why to focus on community-based organizations as a college and career readiness partner and as a strategy. So Dr. Foster, it's to you.
Thank you so much, Kefi. Also wanted to honor Bonnie as well. Bonnie, thank you for your incredible leadership. You're going to be greatly missed, and we'll continue to wish you well. So why focus on community-based organizations as college and career readiness partners, defining the IDEA model? One of the things that we've continued to do in our department, student engagement services, is really like looking at how partners, community-based partners, have been key elements to helping to support students, schools, administrators, counselors, and really just the learning community as a whole. And so while our focus on this presentation right now is about community-based partnerships, preparing students for college and career readiness, we also recognize that it takes a village, and there's a holistic model around every entity doing its part to serve students and to serve families, whether it's for college, career, readiness, and that is inclusive of military, it's inclusive of apprenticeships, it's inclusive of civic engagement, and really just going into life and helping to develop young people in lives. Thank you. The next two slides are some statewide trends that we found on the Washington report card, in addition to 2019 Educational Research and Data Center information. And it's really a snapshot, one example of information that we have to understand how students are learning from their experience in P12, and also where students are potentially going. So this is one data source that we're using. So 83% of students that graduated in 4 years for class of 2021. But then we're looking at some of this 2019 data that talks about those graduated students. 35% of students are enrolling in 4-year colleges. 25% are enrolling in the 2-year colleges. And then of that, 53% attain no degree after 8 years into college. And so just wanting to put some of that data forward. Again, it's not the whole picture. It is a part of the picture that talks about what our students may be experiencing post high school and post-secondary opportunities. Thank you. The next slide is another way of showing some of that information that we shared on the previous slide, same data sources, but we also, let's just say 68% of the 9th graders who were on track to graduate in 2021 school year, that upper altitude moved to the 83%. And then you see what happened from the 4-year, which we mentioned, the percentage of entering college, the percentage persisting into a sophomore program, so that 24%, that 35% being that full college picture, and then the institution of graduation at the 6%, as well as the 25%. So take a few seconds to read that slide. But also, as we think about this pathway to college, keeping in mind there are other pathways that can be explored and should be explored. So that pathway to career, that pathway to apprenticeship, that pathway to military, that pathway into civic engagement and serving community, that pathway into starting a family and having a life. There's multiple pathways that are not mentioned here, but definitely wanting to give them that shout out. Next slide. So the next 4 slides I will share you can look at your resource. I think Ronnie's put in the PDF form a resource guide or resource tool. And so that resource tool will include some links that you can find information to these, but I will just be talking through them so that you have the idea and the heart behind the messaging, and then you can do that extended research starting with the tool that we provided, but also yourself. There's still, lots of information. These are good things to spend time exploring. So the implications for learning, recovery, and acceleration, there's kind of 4 key elements that we find in not just research, but also just in best practice in why learning, recovery, and learning acceleration is really important. And so the first part of the disengagement, I put a little line through there because disengagement is the word that is used in legislature. So a lot of times we have to use some of these terms that may not necessarily speak to the whole experience. And so when I think about disengagement, I think about it as continual engagement. So the implications for learning, recovery, and learning acceleration provides us a continual engagement kind of experience for students, educators as well. And then the ability to continue connections, but utilizing community-based organizations to help support learning, recovery, and acceleration also helps build the connection because there's multiple ways of connecting. It also helps expand the learning. So those expanded learning opportunities, those ELOs, the expanded learning opportunities, those usually come through community-based organizations to help support. And then again, addressing the whole child so that it's a whole child narrative. It's everything. It's not just academics. It's not just attendance. It's social emotional learning. It's social experiences, it's psychological, but there's this whole child mechanism on utilizing in increasing learning, recovery, and acceleration, and also using community-based organizations as partners to do so. Thank you. So the next big idea about community-based organizations, partnerships, and academia speaks to these three kind of pieces that we want to encourage our counselors, our agencies, our ESDs, and teachers and educators to remember that community-based organizations can help kind of bridge some of those gaps. And so there may be timing restrictions that we have in our traditional systems. Well, you know, a lot of community-based organizations, they're the ones that see our kids after we serve them. And so there's this collective opportunity to help extend and bridge gaps. And then just thinking about how representation really matters. And so a lot of times in the traditional Eurocentric systems, there's a gap between representation. And so one of the things I know Dixie Grubenfelder, our supervisor, we talk about this all the time, is like, if you know in your agency, if you know within your schools, you don't have full representation of what the population of students look like, then you think about who are your external partners that can help fill those opportunities of representation, that have the lived experiences, that are the subject matter experts in connecting to students as a whole. And then the third kind of idea of creating and serving as an additional resource, where community-based organizations are your partners. They're additional resources to you. They're additional resources to the students, the families, the counselors, the system. So this collective approach that parents, all of us, educators, all of us have a part in supporting our future, which is our young people. Thank you. And then OSPI's foundational model for college and career readiness. So thinking about at OSPI, if you go to our site, and that's inside of your resource hub, we talk a lot about this career pathway, and we talk and provide a lot of different links and things like that. And there's also organizations that we work with, but ideally this slide is really for you all to keep in mind that there's this collective resource, right? So being able to connect to OSPI to find out who our partners are and serve collectively on that front, to be able to connect to your ESDs, find out who their partners are, serve collectively on those fronts, and then other stakeholders in general that you may have or that we may have. And then the second idea is looking at local and national coalitions and student groups to help connect to community-based organizations and partner with community-based organizations to, again, bottom line, serve students. And then the career first options, right? So thinking about the career first piece, and that again is where you'll see on our OSPI site, we really emphasize the career piece in addition to the college piece. Thank you. And then this last slide is going to really encourage you all to think about like quick wins to get started. Some of the last, in the all call, we heard people say, look, this is great, but how do I get this information out to parents? How do I get started? How do I connect as an educator to find community-based organizations if that's not a part of my traditional system? And so some of the where to find community-based organizations is, like I mentioned, we are resources to you, myself, my colleagues, my organization. In addition, students will know. Students are working with community-based organizations all the time and in different ways. And so being able to find and connect with students and find out student first what their voice is and who they want to work with and who they are already working with, you'd be surprised how many community-based organizations are still serving our students. And then the collaborative funding piece of, you know, one of the things that we do at OSPI is we're offering grants, and you look at our grant models, there's community-based organization grant models, and then there's also the opportunity for direct funding for community-based organizations that are where we are encouraging and really requiring the community-based organizations and their assurances to have partnership with schools directly. So that shows up in our assurances when we're serving grants through community-based organizations and encouraging that collaborative experience. And then the policy advocates, if you are a part of legislature, you're making any kind of policy, experiences from education, you'll see community-based organizations alongside you in any of those political kind of experiences and those policy pieces. So wanting to cover that. Thank you. And then really quick, and again, you have the resource, you're going to have to really focus and rely on the resource guide. But best practices for working with community-based organizations, it's really allowing that autonomy. Most community-based organizations are nonprofit organizations, and they're guided by their board, by their board laws. I can't think of the word exactly, kind of skipped me, but their bylaws and things like that. And also just how they move. There may be, just autonomy you have to be mindful of in terms of best practices, being mindful of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and really those kinds of unified experiences might be different than the traditional experiences. So thinking through that, and then having understanding around, the differences between their traditional systems and non-traditional systems, and how they may or may not engage like yours, or in connection to yours. And then this collaborative opportunity. So seeing community-based organizations as collaborators and not necessarily as competitors. And so sometimes we hear, even in the funding world or in the grant world, we hear, why should we give to community-based organizations, or can schools be a part of that? Or are they our community-based organizations taking funding from schools? And so thinking about this collective collaboration piece, and then the holistic approach, as we mentioned, including the whole child piece. Thank you. And then second, before we move into the panel pieces, I would ask for Dr. John Gaines with Push for Dreams. Dr. John Gaines is a partner with OSPI. He is working, is a grantee of Building Bridges, and also partnering with us on Building Bridges Capacity Grant. Also is connected to doing some work with us on DEI, in CTE and other non-traditional programs. And so I asked for Dr. Gaines to come and just give a welcome. Dr. John Gaines.
Hello, so good to be here. I will be brief, 3 minutes max. My name is Dr. John Gaines. I'm the founder of Push for Dreams. We exist to inspire all people to push to make their dream a reality. And we do that just through a variety of ways, through trainings, professional development opportunities, assemblies. And this work is so important. And I just want to emphasize this idea of what does it mean to be great in our community? Dr. King said it like this. He said, anyone can be great because anyone can serve. We believe in service, and we believe in partnerships. We increase our impact to serve our young people, to serve our educators, and to serve our community by partnerships. We're preparing some 6-month reports, and I was looking at some data this morning, and just the impact that we've been able to make by being in over 20 schools just this year, visiting over 20 schools, having over 10 different community-based, student-led type of events, all of the press. And I thought about that because people just see Push for Dreams, but we always try to just emphasize this idea of partnership and this idea of collaboration, because as we go in and talk about different things, like Dr. Foster said, we believe in the whole child approach. So before we can talk about attendance or career or college, there's levels to what we do and how we do our approach. And so I'm grateful to be here this morning. I'm grateful to partner with phenomenal groups like the Trufant Family Foundation and Marcus Trufant. He's someone that inspired me. So to now be, being able to work with him. And then also a little later in this webinar, you'll be able to hear from one of our board members and one of our mentors who he's a mentor in 2 of our programs and 2 of our schools in Tacoma. He's also CEO of a construction company. And then you'll be able to hear from one of our mentees who I met over 10 years ago and now is in college. And now he runs some of our summer programs. And so I'm so grateful to be here. This work literally means everything to me. And so grateful to do the welcome.
Before you jump, Dr. Johns, thank you. Can you talk about just really briefly Building Bridges and kind of what that experience has been for your organization and the partnership for Building Bridges with OSPI?
Yes, I'm not sure. I don't think Dixie's on the panel, but I believe she's on the call.
Dixie's on the call. She's on the call.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I believe in just giving folks their flowers while they can still smell them, right? So Dixie, Dr. Foster, and Kefi. So what we're doing with Building Bridges, one, has been able to allow us to build a bridge If just full transparency, this morning I'm in front of a church, so I'm in my car, and I'm gonna try to keep it together. Just a young man that was in one of our mentoring programs had mental health issues, and so I'm eulogizing his memorial today. And I think about the impact, and I think about this work. Literally, there's so much urgency in the work that Dixie, Dr. Timmy, and Kefi are doing to help us bridge the gap, as we talked about Mental Health Awareness Month, to help us bridge the gap that's so important. And so we've been excited and just so much joy to work with incredible organizations, and then also fund other organizations where we realize that we can't show up and do the work. We've been able to fund other organizations that have trust with certain communities, representation that represent other communities. We've been able to fund those organizations to show up and do the work. And so anyway, grateful to be here, grateful for building bridges. It's an incredible project and an incredible program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gaines, and Dixie's put a thank you in there as well. We're very grateful for your partnership. So last but not least on my side, I get the honor of introducing Marcus Trufant, an incredible, let me just back up really quick. Thank you for what you shared, Dr. John. I don't want to move forward without acknowledging that their service to the community, and also acknowledging the young person and the hard work that you have to do from your piece. So I just want to back up a little bit because I get excited, but I also want to spend a second to acknowledge that even more. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I get the honor to introduce retired Seattle Seahawks legend, Marcus Trufant, and even beyond that, a man of such valor, of such integrity, of such passion, and really a true leader, not just in Tacoma, Washington, although he reps Tacoma very hard, but in Washington State and in our world. Marcus continues to give back through his service, using his platform and his work and hard work in sports and in finance and in real estate and giving and in family to give to everyone. And I seen Tom put go Cougs. We won't start that fight, but you educated, strong. The fight is starting. Last but not least, it's coming. I'm a Husky, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow this. I see it's taking over. Without any further ado, Marcus Trufant, the man himself, I'd like to invite you to the platform. Marcus Trufant, please.
Yes, how's everybody doing? And Dr. Timmy, thank you for that. Thank you very much for that intro. And shout out to all my Cougs out there. Shout out to Huskies as well. For those of you who don't know, my youngest brother is a Husky, so I do rep the Huskies. My middle brother is an Eastern Eagle, so the Trufants have touched every corner of Washington, of course, when it comes to college football. And
really quick, Marcus, I'm actually going to invite Kefi back up because she'll be leading this session. I'll come jump in on a few things, but Kefi, I want to bring you back to the platform as well. But yeah, continue, please, Marcus.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that my prayers are with Dr. Gaines and the young man's family. That has to be heavy on his heart this morning, so I really appreciate him jumping in for a couple minutes. So yes.
Thank you. Kefi, if you can lead this part of it, I'm bringing you back to the forefront. I love your voice just to help guide this part of the panel piece with Marcus Trufant. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dr. Foster. Yeah, I have to say this morning and over the course of this last month, my spouse, my partner who sits behind me often, has been like, you're hanging out with Marcus Trufant, and he has been so excited for this. So just so you know, go Cougs, and we'd love to hear your story. So, I mean, you're kind of living the dream of so many students out there. And I think it would be great if you could share kind of your story and how did you make this dream a reality?
Well, yes, this dream of mine didn't so much start as early as a lot of people would think, right? I was just like any other kid, getting my start in sports and just running around on the playground and just having fun and just doing it because that's what kids do as far as energy. And I love to run. I like to jump. I love to hang out with my friends. And everything started with education at school. My parents, my mom and my dad were, they always pushed education first, right? Of course, if I wanted to play sports, if I wanted to do these extracurricular things, I had to make sure that I took care of my business first. I had to take care of my grades. I had to try hard. They never said I had to get straight A's, right? But I had to give everything my best shot. So when people ask me who are my mentors or who are the people that kind of shaped and molded me, it always starts with my parents, starts with family. We fed off each other, parents, and of course, when I'm talking family, I mean aunts and uncles and my grandma and grandparents. All that support system really made a difference in my life. And I try to model that now as far as my own children and what me and my wife do. Support can move and push a young person to places they never thought they can go, right? They see a parent in the crowd at, you know, it could be at a recital, it could be at anything. They light up. So you put that on steroids, that could be for anything. Okay, my parents are really paying attention to my grades. My grandparents are really taking an interest to the things that I want to do. That shifts a kid into a totally different atmosphere. So that's what we try to do at the True Front Family Foundation, is be that support system, show kids and show families that we do care. And that's where that came from. So going back to my dream and where I was at, I was just a young kid trying to make it happen. Things just seemed to fall into place. Okay, I got my start at the Al Davies Boys and Girls Club in Tacoma. So a group of friends asked me to come out. I came out, I did that. I met tons of mentors at the Boys and Girls Club. I still do a lot of work with them. I feel like the Boys and Girls Club is very important to the community. And then I go from there, I go into middle school, go to high school. I meet different coaches. I meet like-minded individuals when it comes to playing sports and doing the right thing and being a positive person in the community. Again, the goal is not to be perfect, but the goal is to put your best foot forward. So going to Washington State, I do my thing. Of course, education is still important. I'm pushing. I'm not perfect. I have to go to summer school. I have to do all these things centered around education in order to do the extracurricular. And now that Seahawk dream starts to creep in as I get into my senior year of college. And then I get that big call on draft day from the Seahawks. And that was great, right? But in my mind, I was like, how can I rinse and repeat this process? There's so many young men that I grew up with in Tacoma that had the skill level I had, that had could run, could jump, could do their thing, but they didn't have that support system that I had. So that was immediate, right? I really wanted to find a way to give back. So that's where that crept in. I could go on all day, Kefi. I know I'm getting long-winded, so if you let me know what you want to hear next.
No, that's great. I know, like, as a parent, I'm curious what it's like to live in that kind of family. And, you know, you hear stories about Tiger Mom and that kind of thing. And it's great to hear that you had so much support. It's wonderful. So I'm curious, what kind of effects did counselors and educators have on you? I know that the impulse out there is to dissuade kids from pursuing NFL careers and being professional athletes. I mean, it's, you know, kind of a 1 in a million kind of thing. What would you want a school counselor or a teacher to have said to you? And I mean, what advice would you give to a kid?
Right. And I kind of touched on this earlier, right? I know we all strive for perfection, right? And there's a way to do that, and there's a way to push, but we want to encourage children to be themselves, right? And I think as far as the honesty, and when you start talking about numbers of making it to a professional sports team, those numbers are very small, just like you talked about. But counselors play a huge role, just as far as information and what they can give to students. And it's not only the students. I think the parents or the guardians play a huge role in that, just in the process of pursuing higher education, right? Most of the time, if a kid has to do it on its own, or to do things on their own, it's going to be really tough. And that counselor is really going to have to roll up their sleeves and really walk that student through every step. So as you talk about a village, it really takes a team approach in order to make this work. So I know there's tons of counselors out there doing great work, but really to push on information, and not so much just feeding information to the kids or to parents, but kind of breaking it down in a digestible form for that student, for those families that may have a generational type of situation going on, to where this may be the first opportunity that somebody in the family has an opportunity to pursue higher education. So you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. I talked about it earlier. Things don't have to be perfect, but if you're pushing through and you're making baby steps and you're really making it happen, that is something to be celebrated. I really focus on celebrating all victories. If those are small victories or those are big victories, you got to celebrate everything. So the role of the counselor is to be that resource. The role of the counselor is to be that outlet. And in my personal situation is to, kind of what I went through, is to keep that student focused, right? Kids, I know I was a kid, and your mind is kind of everywhere, right? Yeah, at college, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I still want to hang out with my friends. I might like this girl on the other side of the school, and all these different things, right? But being consistent, saying things over and over again. Students, they may push you to the side, or they may not be as consistent as you might like, but being that voice of reason, that when the time is right, that student is going to remember that. So yeah.
Yeah, the warm demanders, we need those to help organize our lives. And I know that the school counselors play a huge role in getting kids through school and on to the next thing. And all of those connections are also strengthened through community-based organizations like yours. And so thinking about kind of the transition up, it's really important to have involvement there. I do want to ask you a bit about the Trufant Family Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Why did you start this, and how did it evolve?
Yes, the Trufant Family Foundation is near and dear to my heart. I touched on it a little bit earlier, just about the passion and the want to support a community that supported me, of course, as a young man, and not just me, but my family and my friends, right? So the Trufant Family Foundation has supported a little bit of everything. And you talk about all types of organizations, whether that be sickle cell organizations, whether that be breast cancer, whether that be autism, you name it, right? There's so many needs out there. There's a bunch of work that needs to be done, but we've focused on education, supporting students that want to go into higher education, and we've had the Trufant Family Foundation Scholarship Fund for a number of years now. supporting the majority of the high schools in the Tacoma area and neighboring partnering communities around the state, right? And a scholarship is one thing, and I think Dr. Gaines may have touched on this earlier, but it takes much more to support a college student, right? And we did a little bit of this during COVID. We partnered up with the Tacoma Urban League. We partnered with Seattle Education Access, just doing these different things for students as they were trying to get through and focus on their education. If you can't eat, it's hard to do your homework, right? If you don't have transportation to and from, I mean, and doing these different things as far as your housing and all these things that it could have a negative impact, we've tried to fill that gap. So the Trufant Family Foundation is really a family organization. My mom has been the executive director for a number of years, especially while I was playing. She really took the lead, right? And that was for a good reason. As you know, I was playing, I was doing my thing on the Seahawk field, and mom and my dad and all the volunteers, they were really rolling up their sleeves and making it work. But since I've been retired for the past 10 years, and me and my wife have jumped into the fight much heavier. And yes, the Trufant Family Foundation, being local and being drafted to the hometown team, it's something that doesn't happen very often. So to be able to have that connection to the community, I mean, I grew up 45 minutes south of Seattle. So all my friends that I went to school with, all my teachers, people from church, just people in the community, they knew of me, I knew of them. So it was easy to be like, okay, I want to start this nonprofit and I want to start doing work and I want to start to help people. And that's really what it comes down to. And the best thing about it is really just hearing these stories, right, of kids that they come back and be like, okay, you know, I went to one of your football camps, Marcus, I had a great time, and now I'm playing college ball over here. Or, you know, I got a college scholarship from the Trufant Family Foundation, and now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. But it's these success stories that really fuel us to continue doing the work. And that's what it's about. The work never stops. And it's really about building those partnerships. I know Dr. Timmy talked about that earlier. So you build these partnerships in the community, and what better place to do it than in the community that you grew up in.
Yeah, that's so cool that you could bring it back to Tacoma and just, you know, put it into action. I love it. That's an awesome progression. I'm wondering a little bit about, you talked about scholarships, you talked about football camps. What are kind of the supports that your foundation is getting behind?
Well, yeah, we, just like I said, if there's anything in Washington, if there's anything in Tacoma, and if we could be part of that, the Trufant Family Foundation is down for all that. And we've, just like I said, we've been doing that for a number of years. We've been doing that for a number of years. And we do have camps. We have the scholarship program. We have a Christmas-based event that's for the community. Of course, it's for the kids, but we want to raise money, right? And we're not shy about saying that, because those funds, of course, go right back into the community. But just working with people like Dr. Timmy and working with people like Dr. Gaines and then in the Push for Dreams, and working with organizations like the UW Tacoma, the Milgard family, the Teamworks organization, just the many people that are in Tacoma, that are in the Washington area, that are like-minded, right? And I know for me and for us at the Trufant Family Foundation, it's not about getting the recognition, right? It's really about the impact that we can make on those students, on the youth, on those people in need, to help out and shine a light on those underrepresented communities, and just being able to make that happen. And it is, if you can do more as a group, right? And you can always take that team approach. So that's what we're looking to do now. The Trufant Family Foundation is looking for teammates. We want to build stronger team, and we want to build a bigger team. So that's our goal for this year, to build more partners and to get more partners, and just to continue to make a bigger impact.
Yeah, that's so great that you can empower other organizations as well. I know, like, in nonprofit world, sometimes it's hard to get continual funding, and just to be able to rely on those kinds of things. So that's pretty cool. Exciting stuff. So I'm curious a little bit about your partnerships. I mean, how do you choose them? Like, there's so many different organizations out there, and what keeps your partnerships going?
Well, I think it's just that like-minded approach, right? And for us, and for, of course, a lot of those organizations out there, you really have to take that business approach, right? And you got to build this as a business, and you need those teammates, and you have to build that team of go-getters that's gonna continue to make this thing sustainable, right? And it starts with the passion, and that's exactly, that's where I was at in the very beginning, right? And you talk about mistakes, and you talk about things not being perfect, and kind of that's what we did at the beginning of the Trufant Family Foundation. Everything was passion led. Everything was about the feeling, right, and making sure that that our heart was in the right place. But we quickly learned that you can't run a business, or you can't have a sustainable nonprofit off passion alone, right? So strategic partners, having a strategy in place to have that largest amount of impact. So you got to go out and you got to talk to these different organizations, and you'll quickly find out that there's a lot of people that think and have that same type of passion that you do. So just like I mentioned before, at John Gaines and the Push for Dreams, we've been working closely with the Milgard family for a number of years in Tacoma. They've been a big supporter of ours. And we're looking to join forces with more corporate sponsorship, and just continuing to push forward. But I think what you can't be afraid of as a foundation, or as a, I guess, and even as a business, right, that you can't hold things too close to the chest, right? What is really your goal? And you kind of not so much got to be carefree with it, but you have to be willing to potentially take a step back in order for the bigger vision. And you just have to go out and search for those organizations that are willing to do that. And being local, I love doing things on a local scale. So I'm all for that, because like I said, from the very beginning, to be able to come back to my hometown and do things in the community that I grew up in is huge. But things that sustain the partnership, I think, is open and honest communication. And you set those goals, and you build that proper strategy that is going to benefit everyone, right? And not just from that organizational side, but from the community side and the impact as well. And everything has a cost associated with it, and that is okay. But we have to talk through that and have open and honest communication, and just make sure that strategy is right. So that's really just what we try to do. Yeah.
Marcus, this is Dr. Timmy. I want to jump in. Can you talk a little, because we have, have about 150 counselors, school counselors on the line right now, and some like ESTs, which are, state level supporters. Can you talk about maybe what you've done with schools and how counselors can be supportive, and maybe how, other, systems like OSPI and ESD can continue to explore potential partnerships with you?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to exposure, right? And putting things out there. I don't know if that's a special type of program or if that's some type of outreach to the students, to the parents, to let the students and parents and know what's available, right? Because I found in the past that sometimes students don't know that things are available, right? That there is this type of help that's out there. And I talked about it before, that kids' minds, it could be everywhere, right? Of course, I was one of those kids, so I totally get it and I understand. But to have anything, right? And I've done it before. I've came out to schools, I've did talks, and using the flare, right? I call it the Seahawk flare, but then you transition, you get them on the hook, okay? It's talking about go Hawks, we're doing chants and all that kind of stuff, and then you shift and you mode it, and you talk about that access and things that are available, and that is, I think, it can be one of the biggest hurdles that sometimes kids just don't know that things are available. As you know, you have these scholarships that are there, but I mean, if nobody's signing up and if nobody's putting in the applications and doing different things like that, it makes it tough. So you really have to be strategic on how you get the information out to these kids. It's hard just to send a paperwork and do different stuff like that. That you gotta come to where the kids at. And as you know, if that's doing things on social media, if that's getting on TikTok or doing dances or doing whatever you have to do to make sure that the kids, that the kids and the parents are seeing that, that's what you have to do. So that's what the True Family Foundation is trying to do. They're trying to get creative, trying to be on trends and different things that kids may be following and doing things right now, because that's where you're going to reach the biggest amount of kids. And if you keep feeding it to them and it's repetition, that's how you're going to reach the kids. So yeah, just being very strategic on how you get the information out to the youth.
That is fantastic advice. I think so much of just like the strategy right now is getting important messages in front of the right people at the right time, especially around these things. We did have a question from the audience. What age group are y'all working with, and how are you including families? And what are some of the needs that you're seeing out there?
Well, yeah, like I said before, where we work with high school kids now, and that's where we give the scholarships, but we do want to build out programs to start, I mean, as early as elementary school, right? We believe that the earlier the better. That takes more staff, that takes more teammates, and that takes all that kind of stuff. But starting these programs early and talking about education to parents and kind of giving them the information for the younger kids, right? And then when that time comes in high school, they'll have that information, and they've already kind of been schooled and groomed in that place. So what was I gonna say? Yeah, so we work with the high school kids, but we do want to start earlier, getting in the schools earlier, getting to the parents as early as possible, and just giving them the education on how to access higher education funds and just the kind of ABCs of going to college.
Another question we had from the audience was, are you partnering at all with WSU's Gear Up program? Are you aware of them?
No, I'm not, and I would love that information. So whoever sent that, question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys could get that for me, but yes, I would love to do that. And I want to do much more with the Cougs. I haven't done a lot with them as far as on the education side, but I've been reaching out the last couple of years to try to make some things work, and they just haven't worked out quite yet. But but I'm not a quitter, so I'm definitely gonna keep pushing on that. But yes, I would definitely love that information.
We'll encourage Rita to follow up with you.
Thank you, Rita.
Cool program. I think you'll be excited about it. And I think one of our last questions today is from Bobby. She said, one of my students once said, "I don't need to study. I'm going to be a professional athlete." How would you respond to a kid that had that mindset?
That's a good question, and that kid, that's pretty funny. But so what that young man or woman may not know is that when you're a professional athlete, you have to go to class too. You have to study your playbook. You have to study the rules and regulations of the sport. You have to study the other teams. So studying is just not history, math, science, and all that kind of good stuff, right? And I know there's situations to where professional athletes may go straight from high school to the pros, but you want to be well-rounded. And another thing I would say to this young person is that you only play professional sports for a short period of time. When you're done, what are you going to do? If you haven't learned how to study, haven't learned how to develop these other skills and do other things. I was retired from the NFL at maybe 32, right? And you're still a young person with a lot of life to live and with a lot of things to offer. So learn how to study, learn how to do other things. I think I can stand on my soapbox for a quick minute about sports, but you are doing these kids and these athletes a disservice when you put them in the box. Okay, we only want you to focus on sport. We only want you to focus on your professional sport for 5-10 years, right? And then when you retire or it cuts you or we kick you off the team, you don't have any other skills. So my advice would be to learn where your passions are, learn about other things that you may want to do, but continue to think big picture. Sports are only for a short part of your life, but there's a lot of life after sports. I know that was a long answer, but I could go round and round about that. I would love actually to speak to this young man or woman. If y'all can set that up, and let's do it.
All right, Bobby, you got to follow up. That'd be great. Folks are also wondering a little bit about if people wanted to take advantage of scholarships from your foundation or something, should they go to your website? What would be the best way to get involved?
Yes, go to TrueFontFamilyFoundation.com, or you can go to MarcusTrueFont.com, and all the information will be there on that scholarship program. And we're, we of course are happy to help, and we're continuing to build, and we're continuing to do new things. So I definitely be on the lookout for that. And we're building new partners too. So that's really my goal, because I want to expand this thing and just do as much as we can. And like I said before, make the most impact that we can.
Absolutely.
This is Dr. Tenney. There was a question in there, Kathy. It was a little bit compound, but it was about student voice. And so you want to cue that up. Marcus, you can talk a little bit about how students their voice are included in your work. That would be great.
Right. And when you talk about student voice, and from what I expect, or
how are students
what direction?
Involved? Yeah, like how are students involved in like telling your organization what they want, or being able to just communicate and talk to you all about like what they're doing. It's a common term. It's more of an educational term. They use student voice. That's kind of saying how are students involved. Right.
Yeah. So how students are involved, the process of building that relationship, right? And having that open conversation and open dialogue of the needs, open dialogue about the wishes and the dreams and kind of what direction that these students want to go. And I think that's very important. I think that's very important in just in general, because most of the time young people feel powerless, right? Especially when it comes to big bad adults that make all the decisions and pretty much have all the power, right? But to empower young people and encourage them to be outspoken, to tell people what they want, to tell people what they don't want, I think is very important. So as a foundation, as an organization, our ears are always open. It's not always about the things you say, but sometimes it's about how good you listen, right? And then what that young person is saying to you. So that's all a part of the process of filling out just about the process of filling out applications, getting to know these students, really getting their background, talking to their families, to really hear their tone, to hear their voice, to know exactly what they're coming from, because then you can know where you're going.
Awesome. And you said earlier, you're focused on your community kind of in the Tacoma, Seattle area. Are you working at all in Eastern Washington, or are you interested in working with Eastern Washington? There's folks who are interested.
Yes, I am very interested in working, in Eastern Washington. Of course, Pullman is over there. So I know somebody sent something about Washington State. I would definitely love to be part of that. In Eastern Washington, I know, I don't know if they're talking about the campus of Eastern Washington, but that's where my middle brother went. I spent some time in Cheney. I know the Seahawks. That's where we used to do our training camp over there in Cheney. I spent time in Spokane. So for me, local is the start for me. Local is where my heart is at. Local is where I really understand and I see where the impact could be made, right? And growing up here and knowing that the professional sports arena is like that dream of young kids. Now I think it's even bigger now, just because of the information with social media and everything like that. The press puts these images out, and not that it's a bad thing, right? But continuing to push being well-rounded. It's okay to have these dreams. I want to go pro. I want to do this, but let's be a well-rounded person, a well-rounded student, to have other skills as well, because you never really know. Yes, I know you're determined. Yes, I know that you train year-round and you do this and you do that, but it's really a numbers game. It's really a numbers game. So as we're working on these dreams, as we're going through the process, and my son does it. He turns on YouTube and he watches sports highlights of me and his uncles, right? And he's doing all these different moves and different stuff like that. But when the time is right, I'm going to encourage my own son to be a well-rounded person, have other skills, learn how to study, and you got to do your thing and just be an all-around person with choices, right? And so I say all that to say, yes, I would love to work in Eastern Washington and make things happen over there.
Awesome. Christina said that she's talking about Spokane, Tri-Cities, and Yakima, and Bobby wanted to follow up and let you know that her student who said they didn't have to study, he blew out his knees and he finished high school and he's now in college part-time while working to support his family. So full circle. Yeah, things happen and it's good to have a plan B. And I think Stan was telling me before this webinar even that sports management is pretty sweet. So thinking about careers around sports is also a great way to continue to keep it in the foreground. So I think it is probably time for us to go to our panel discussion. Thank you, Marcus, so much for joining us and for sharing your experiences this morning. The Trufant Family Foundation is just so inspiring. I love your thinking locally to affect global. And yeah, so cool.
Thank you for having me, Kathy. Thank you, guys.
And then one quick thing too, Marcus, as you mentioned, you brought Stan, you're actually on the board of that organization. So I want to acknowledge that and also acknowledge the big award that your mother just received from UWT and that organization. So as we bring up Stan and Kathy, as you introduce them, I'd love to just acknowledge your mom, Mrs. Trufant, for the award, and also Stan, UWT, and also thank you for bringing Stan to this conversation with you for us. So thank you very much, Marcus.
Thank you. And yes, a big shout out to Mama True for that that award that she got. And she got the Nonprofit Leader of the Year award, and I'll let Stan talk in detail about that. But yes, congratulations, Mom.
Thank you, Marcus. Kathy?
Yeah, that is so cool that she got it. Like, and what a boon to the foundation too, just to get that kind of recognition. I mean, it kind of I caught another question in the chat about there's just a lot of living after being a professional athlete, and who takes care of that, like the money, honestly. And so you've got to know that you're a business owner once you're out there, and that you are yourself worth a lot. So that was a question that they put to you, I think, as well. So how have you managed all of that cool stuff?
Well, yeah, kind of what I talked about earlier. Nowadays, I feel like it's better just with information and how fast information travels by way of social media. But back in the day, or back in my day, I make myself sound really old, right? They put, well, these sports organizations, of course, they want you to focus. They want you to take your craft serious. But what I was saying earlier, that sports is is a short period of time. So having these programs and different camps and different things for broadcasting, and when you're talking about sports management and all the money that's involved in that, I'll let Stan talk a little bit about that. But if you're talking about billions of dollars of not being a professional athlete, but being in the business of sport, there's a lot of money out there. There's a lot of jobs out there. And just outside of that in general, it's really up to the individual to treat themselves as a business. You are your business. You do have a brand. So take control of that, right? And you do want to build a team. It's tough to do anything by yourself, but continue to build your team, and you got to do the research. You have to study about what you like, things that move you, and what's going to move the needle. If that's going to be real estate, if that's going to be tech, if that's going to be anything. There's so many things out there. I got involved with self-storage. Yeah, you might not think that that's as exciting as playing for the Seattle Seahawks, but it's a great business, or I think it's good for me and it works for me and my family. So just doing different things and learning, and you pretty much have to go back to being a new kid on the block, right? And you've played sports for all these years and you've done this, and you may have been at the top of your game, but that's what you've been doing all your life. And when you step into business, you have to kind of go back to the drawing board, and you're the new kid in the class, and you got to study and you got to learn and you got to do the homework. So that's what I did. That's what a lot of guys I know are doing. And it's never too late. It's never too late. Things happen. And I talked about this earlier. We preach perfection And I know we all want to be perfect, but things in most situations don't always go according to plan. So you have to be able to adjust, do things, pivot, and still be able to come out with that outcome that you want.
Yeah, no need to be perfect. We're all flawed humans. It's good to fail forward, for sure.
Agreed.
Growth mindset. Thank you again for all of your wisdom. It has been great to speak with you this morning. We are going to go to our panel, but you're welcome to join in our conversation as well. I'm going to share this thing just to introduce. And so, yeah, welcome to our panelists. We have with us today, we have Dan Whitford from Push for Dreams. He is a board member. He is a mentor, as well as a founder and the CEO of the advanced construction team at Push for Dreams. And we also have with us Makai Jones. He has been a lead summer program mentor. He's a college student. He's also been a mentee for Push for Dreams in the past. And we have with us as well Stan Emmert. He's the executive director for sports enterprise management at the Milgard School of Business at the University of Washington, Tacoma. We are so glad that y'all are here with us today. And I think that we should just start with a little bit of information about y'all. So just for quick introductions, Stan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at UW-Tacoma?
Well, sure I can. I'd love to talk about the program if I could. Take me about 3 minutes. Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, first off, thank you to OSPI and to Dr. Timmy and to you, Kefi, as well. And a big thank you to Marcus. Marcus is also on our advisory board at Sports Enterprise Management. But if you've never heard Marcus before, Marcus is inspirational. He's inspirational. He was so inspirational to one of our students, 35-year-old combat veteran, just as tough as nails, and she was just as giddy as she could be. She could hardly wait to have her picture taken with Marcus Trufant. But our sports enterprise management program is all about the business of sports. It's $1 trillion global industry, but it's not just football or basketball. This program is about helping students prepare for a career, and it may not even be in sports. For example, the Seahawks have 560 plus employees, and only 70 of them are on the field. So the rest of them are doing the business of sports. For example, if you're in management for the Tacoma Rainiers, you're not just in charge of a sports team. You're managing several restaurants, a bar, a retail store, a banquet facility, a meeting and conference hall, a creative design company, a party venue, a COVID testing site, and a community organization. That's a big job. Every course that we teach in our sports enterprise management minor will help students in their other classes. We're doing just what Marcus said. And a significant part of our classes includes speakers from the industry. Just this past year, we had the former executive vice president of the NFL, a former president of the Seahawks, the president of the Storm, the chief operating officer of the Sounders, an investor in esports teams, a designer of esports tournaments. Marcus came and spoke on athletes and finances. It was a great talk. Jen Mueller and Dave Sims from the Mariners broadcast, a woman NFL player agent, Larry Stone from the Seattle Times, a Kraken executive. And in case you're a fitness fan, we even had Mr. P90X himself, Tony Horton, come and speak to our class about the business of sports. Students hear the concepts, and then they get to ask questions of people who work in the industry. We take advantage of the tremendous place where we live. The business of sports is on the snow, the lakes, the oceans, the mountains, even the ice caves. So if you think that sports is just what you see on Sunday or Monday night, you definitely need to be in sports enterprise management. This year we had 2 new instructors, Aaron Artman, the award-winning president of the Tacoma Rainiers, who taught revenue generation, and Jen Cohen, the UW athletic director, who taught special topics. And if there's anybody that knows about the difficulties of managing a $135, $140 million organization that's in college sports, it's Jen Cohen. Students can finish the minor within 1 year and have plenty of time for their major in something else. The classroom for most of our sports enterprise management classes is at Cheney Stadium, and we have free parking, so that's kind of interesting as well. And many of our classes are Wednesday nights. And what we do is projects involving real companies, real programs, and possibly real impact for the students. We have students already employed with most of the teams that we've already talked about. Our sports enterprise management classes are high energy, just like sports. And so we are very much encouraging students who want to be in the business of fun. That's what we're in.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Dan, let's go to you next. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your role at Push for Dreams and what Push for Dreams is all about? Oh, and Dan, you're muted.
Yes, my name is Daniel Whitford. I have the opportunity to be on the board for Push for Dreams. I am from the Ojibwe tribe. I'm Native American. I'm an indigenous man. I also started a construction company. It's about 2 years old. It's been a lot of ups and downs, but I guess one of the most important things to me in joining the Push for Dreams team is John and I grew up together, and I was able to see his heart. And right when I seen, the way he walks and talks and, loves everybody, I said, hey, anything I can do to be a part of it, sign me up, so, he gave me the opportunity to be on the board. We go to schools, speaking engagements, it's a very wonderful opportunity to have.
Awesome. And Makai, what about you? How did you get involved with Push for Dreams?
It's the first time talking of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, in fourth grade, that's the first time Dr. John came and spoke at one of my schools. And then after that, I kind of just followed him around and went to different schools with him while he was speaking and like held his water for him or whatever. But then after I graduated, the summer program started that we do at Keithley Middle School to help kids with self-empowerment and stuff like that. And then he hired me on for that. And I was just a helper last year, but going into this summer, I'm going to be a project or program lead. So it's pretty cool.
That's incredible. This is Dr. T. I'm going to jump in too. Kefi and I will kind of produce this part of it. But Makai, for you especially, can you talk about being a young person and meeting Dr. John Gaines in fourth grade and then serving and working alongside him? Like why is mentorship so important, to you and doing the push work? Why is it so important to you? How has it impacted you?
How it's impacted me personally? Well, I'm not sure because it started for me when I was so young. So I grew into it, and I feel like I'm more of a proprietor of it. But last year working at Keithley Middle School, there's tons of kids that I see how it impacted them more directly. And just a quick month, it's just a summer, but it's a couple months and it's a quick change. There was one kid at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the summer, the beginning of our course, and just quiet, used to sit in the back. And for a while, I didn't think he could talk, so I didn't push him or anything. But then once we got into all of our exercises and everything that we had in his curriculum, the kid came out and was like, oh, I want to be president when I grow up. I want to be this and I want to be that. And the fact that we could get him to vocalize his goals and everything. And then after that, we were like, you have to do this and do that. But you're already in the pathway for that because you said it and you believe it. And by the end of the summer, he was probably the most vocal kid in the class. And he was overall leader on all types of projects.
Thank you.
So Stan, you've been a college athlete and you've coached high school and college basketball. You drew my attention to this stat from Kiplinger that up to 78% of NFL players go bankrupt or they fall into severe financial stress within just 2 years of retirement. What advice would you give to administrators and school counselors to help guide students who want to be professional athletes so that they experience some success, whether they achieve pro status or not?
Well, and that's a great question, but I'd almost like to go back with what Mekhi did with that student who wouldn't talk. Mekhi was almost like a peer mentor, sounds like. And Marcus is one of those unusual athletes who has been a financial success. And when he talked, I mean, outside of sports, and when he talked with our class, it was great. I mean, certainly we didn't have any athletes, like Marcus, but I mean, it's kind of funny here in the Northwest, we have Ichiro Jr. and Marcus, so we all know them by one name. And my specific advice would be to listen to people like Marcus who have been there, done that, and they've avoided the problem. And, whenever we have speakers in my class, students can come in from anywhere. We're happy to have high school students. Becky, we're happy to have your students come over as well. And if Marcus is speaking, and hopefully he will be in the next academic year, we'd love to have you come over.
Okay, if you want me to take the next one?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. Dan, this question is for you. What are the cultural implications you want educators and leaders to keep in mind as in your work for mentoring for students, like just the cultural piece? What are some of the things you want to highlight and put on our counselors and educators' minds?
Can you kind of rephrase the question?
Okay, so as you talk about your work, and you also talk about your pride. And so you mentioned your pride as being a Native man and being really strong and passionate about your culture. What are some things that you would want to keep, like to remind educators of when they're working with students from, racially diverse backgrounds or Native to America, but working with diversity within schools?
So I'd have to say, just keep in mind that everybody is different. Everybody is different, whether it's Native American, Mexican, everybody's different. So they bring different things to the table. And so be open-minded when you're teaching them. They might learn a certain way, because that's what they grew up in their household learning. I only know, from my self-experience of being Native American, that, I felt kind of different when I was in school, because I didn't feel like I felt like I was out of place, I guess, but I guess, one of the things is being different. It's okay to be different. You're unique. Everybody's unique in their own certain way. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, well, and Makai, I think we're going to give last word to you here. Do you have advice for teachers and counselors about building relationships with students, and what can they do to kind of inspire the youth that they're working with?
Okay, let's see. Advice to teachers, students. Okay, so I just finished my first year at Wazoo, so go Cougs. But what I would say is important, like what I noticed throughout like schooling and everything. Anyone who's ever had a foreign language class, like the teacher, oftentimes if it's a good teacher, is going to talk in that language the entire time, and the kids are going to have to pick out words and be able to catch up with it if they truly want them to understand the language. So what I think is important to help kids accelerate is not to talk down to them. Talk to them like you would want them to talk to you. And just like in a foreign language class, they're going to pick up more and more of the concept as you go on, and they'll be able to communicate with you in a clearer way, quicker.
Love that. Yeah, I know some schools have gone on to look at, instead of teacher, to think about them as coaches. And that shoulder to shoulder way of thinking is pretty cool. I like that. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our show for today. Thank you so much for checking this out. If you did see or hear something that you want to discuss with your leadership team, your professional learning community as an opportunity, maybe you want to lead a discussion with some students, those are some considerations, some things that you can do coming up. And we hope that you have a next step. And if you do, we hope you'll share it with us in the chat. We're always curious what people are taking away with them. We do have a couple of resources, and we're going to go to Dr. Foster to talk about some of these. I know for funding opportunities, we do have an Unlocking Federal and State Program Funds to Support Student Success document that was created to help folks find extra money. Dr. Foster, do you want to talk through some of these other ones?
Yeah, sure. So for tools and videos, with OSPI, we have ways that you can read and subscribe to our newsletter. But then the Schools Out Washington is a community-based organization that OSPI funded to support other community-based organizations. And there's some tools that they have on their website that gives you more information about how to engage with community-based organizations and just have access. And then College Success Foundation, we also are supporting College Success Foundation legislatively at OSPI and also doing some additional pieces there. And so there's a site that we've provided the link to for College Success Foundation and finding out some more tools and things like that from that organization. And then there's the website. So I talked about our OSPI website, but there's a college and career readiness page, and that's done by our college career department. And so there's some information and resources there, and also some other folks that you can reach inside of the agency that are working specifically on college career things. And then League of Education Voters is another community-based organization in Seattle, but serves Washington State, and there's some resources around supporting community-based organizations there. And then for the people, it's there's Connect with OSPI staff, but again, also there's the folks here. So for Stan, we'll include his website on here. We'll include the Marcus True Family Foundation website, which I think we dropped in the chat. And we'll also include the link to Push for Dreams, so you can see that information in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, those are all on our resource sheet as well, so you can check them out there, but they're in the slides too, so if you want to be able to grab those links, you can. Not next month, but in the next couple of weeks on May 25th, we have a bonus opportunity for all of our graduation equity webinar listeners. We're going to be talking with Always Be Learning staff, including Stephen Gehring, about turning the academic acceleration policy into action. Stephen's a really gifted presenter, and his work with master scheduling and creating a cohesive school to work pathway is a really great perspective that you're going to want to check out. It's so interesting to think kind of holistically about our systems and how folks get to college or what's next, or careers. So this link will be on our resource sheet, so you can grab it there. And before you go, we always really appreciate your evaluations. So I'm going to launch that in the chat. We also have a long form evaluation that's going to be available in the follow-up email for this webinar. And so if you don't get a chance to do the evaluation and you want to put some thoughts into words instead of just buttons, we're always interested in your feedback around presenters and topics. And we love to hear from you and be informed by what you're looking for. We do love to see our listeners get clock hours for joining us. So if you're watching this webinar now, either live or recorded, all you have to do is register with PD Enroller and then take our feedback survey, and then also take the survey from PD Enroller. And if you're watching the recording, we check these every 2 weeks to offer the clock hours. So just know that they're coming. And if you have questions about this, you can always contact Ronnie Larson. She handles clock hours for us. Thank you again all for joining us. We hope to see you May 25th, and have a great day.